heard that when the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, when he introduced first time the idea to his parliament members of Ethiopia getting an access to sea, as the country cannot continue to be able, to be dependent on paying the expensive rent for other countries. So the idea was really, here and there by the Western media and also the medias in the region, in the Eastern African community, how controversial that was. Now, that idea has become, it has been brought to life as Ethiopia has officially taken first legal steps on a path that could, one day enable the landlocked country to gain access to the sea. Now, its government says, the Ethiopian government, it has signed what is known as an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, with the self-declared Republic of Somaliland to use one of its ports. Hello, I am Mahlet, Ayele, your host at Connect Africa, bringing you the latest from the continent, as we always do, also particularly from the Sahel region and from the Horn of Africa, and in general from the continent. So just tune in and I'll try to give you, as I always do, a bit of a historical background, what happened really, and then what are the reasons that led to this effect, and what has been said, who supported this, who has opposed this, and the self-contradicting oppositions that has come out from various parties, particularly within the continent. So I'm going to shed light on that. Just tune in. So if you are a family of Connect Africa, you may have heard here or tuned when I was discussing. I think we made 2 programs in terms of clarifying what Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said when he said, Ethiopia will get a sea, will get an access to the sea. So people said it's Ethiopia is not ready for another war, or many things, but most of them a negative connotation. So we gave it here a bit of a background, a contextual background, just, as per my understanding, as per my reading, as I always like to say. So here is, I'm gonna go ahead, without further ado, and start to share my slides here so that, I will be able to explain. So now the Memorandum of Understanding was signed by Ethiopia and the the self-declared Somaliland on, I think, 1st of January. Somaliland is not recognized, if you don't know, by any other countries, not by the AU, not by, the UN. I think it's only Taiwan so far who gave recognition. But do not get me wrong, there are several countries who have diplomatic relationship despite, lack of, or despite their, they did not give any recognition to this self-declared state from Somalia. Now, this is, just a bit of a map to give you, this is Somalia. As you see here, there's Somaliland, and around here, there's also Puntland. These are, states that are aspiring to be an independent or a self-declared state by separating from Somalia. And Somaliland have been there, just again, to give you a bit of a background. Here you can see, look, this really historical background will help later on when I explain why Ethiopia is really aspiring, why Ethiopia, it's a matter of life and death for Ethiopia to get a port, okay, or access to the sea. Historically, Ethiopia, Djibouti, and Eritrea were all, now Eritrea is an independent country since 1992, around there, okay, and then there's also Djibouti was part of, historically, when Ethiopia was an empire from the 1270 to 1974. Djibouti was an old story. I think in 1896 or in 1894, Menelik II, who was the emperor at that time, leased it for France, who was colonizing that part of Somalia at that time. So part of it was under Ethiopia. So Menelik II leased it for 99 years to the French, but after 2 or 3 years, that state has become fully under the colony of France. But in any case, I'm going to read this. Ethiopia, Djibouti, and Eritrea were all part of the Ethiopian Empire. At one point in history, the Ethiopian Empire was a kingdom that existed from 1270 to 1974, and at its height, it controlled a large portion of East Africa, including present-day Ethiopia, Djibouti, Eritrea, part of South Sudan, or part of Sudan, you can call it, part of Kenya, so part of Somalia, all this. But since 1991, Ethiopia, after Eritrea gets become independent, Ethiopia has become a landlocked country. Okay, now this is where it starts. Ethiopia starting to rent port from Djibouti. So it has been like that for the past how many years now? I don't know, since 1991 or 1992. Now, a contextual background for Ethiopia's quest for port is, first of all, there's a high rent for Djibouti port. Ethiopia is paying $2 billion for Djibouti annually, and that's very expensive for this, poor country, poor not really in resources, but economically it's struggling. And then there's this exponential population growth. Currently, it's above 120 million, but it's projected to be in 2050 just to be, just above 200 million people, and that's really a lot for a country to stay landlocked. And God knows by that time how much the rent will be as the inflation increases, how much the rent will be for Ethiopia. It's getting aid, it's depending on aid and funds and these foreign currencies. Another reason is one of the most populous landlocked country, not in Africa, but in the world. Now, to rely on a renting port is a challenging for its economy. And then it has loans as well. For example, $13 billion owing to China, and just recently Ethiopia has become the third country defaulting, by not paying the payment it's expected to pay. So a third country in Africa. I mean, they have made the Western propaganda because they have their own agenda, a lot of noise. It's not something new for African countries to become like that. I'm not encouraging it, but they have their own agenda for really, making a noise around this subject. Anyway, that is that. It's another reason for Ethiopia's quest for a port is it just get out of the burdensome of a 2 years war from 2020 to 2022 in the northern part of the country. And then before that there was there was also a continued fight with Shane, called a group called Shane, and now there's also a fight in the Amhara region. I mean, the country is going through a lot, and then the being denied of debt restructuring and many things. So really, for it now to allocate $2 billion just for a port, for a rent of a port, has become something impossible. And the country has said it would rather invest that on other things within the country, to invest, whether it's infrastructure or whatever, to inject it to the economy. Now, these are the different, parts of battles or conflicts that it has gone through within the country. Now, the main question is, last time when I came here and explained, I said my understanding when the Prime Minister said Ethiopia has to get a port or an access to the sea. Now, there has been a lot of a talk before Ethiopia signed this memorandum of understanding with Somaliland. Ethiopia has been in talk with Eritrea to get access to Asa port, and then Ethiopia has been in talking with also with Kenya to get access the Lamu port, and then it also with now the Berbera port of Somaliland. And I said at that time, strategically, it might be better for Ethiopia since those deals are not closed, then maybe Ethiopia will prefer to go to the Somaliland. I think, as I projected, that's what happened. Anyway, now I just remember I made one mistake. Ethiopia started to pay rent for the port of Djibouti after actually we stopped using as a port, because even after Eritrea got its independence, after we had that war in 1998 or 1999, at that time, there was a war with Eritrea for 2 years. It's only after that Ethiopia started to rent, the port of Djibouti. But until then, we were renting the port of Asab, which was part of Ethiopia before Eritrea got its independence. Now, I am just giving this analysis as per my understanding. Why it did not happen? I mean, the problem is it's not clear for the public why this deal is not closed. But from what we know, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, when he came to power in 2018, he initiated the peace talk with Eritrea, and that has actually enabled him to win the Nobel Peace Prize. And there was, as you can see in this headline, Eritrea, Ethiopia partner on economic initiatives to boost reconciliation. But the details were not there. So I don't know why the use of Port of Assa was not closed. That's something that's not clear. So what's the problem for me? I think both sides up until now have not recognized if the talk on the use of port have stalled despite the end of the war in the northern part of Ethiopia, has ended. So that is what, regarding to the port of Asab. And now the port of Djibouti, Ethiopia has been paying $2 billion for this. So, and it's always increasing and it's getting very expensive for the country. At the point where it cannot afford to continue paying that. Now, the Lamu port, we all know that the Prime Minister Abiy have been in talk with President Uhuru, the former president of Kenya, and then the current president of Kenya with President Ruto about this. And they even, I think, inaugurated this Lamu corridor, as you can see from, it connects from Addis Ababa to Lamu. But here on the way, this is my analysis as per my reading. Okay, just see it from that point of view. But all this corridor pass through, on the through Somalia. Okay, now this corridor. So I'm trying to give analysis why it might not have worked for Ethiopia, because there is this long-standing animosity between Ethiopia and Somalia. There was a war in 1960 something, and then in 1970. So there's always this animosity. I mean, we cannot deny that. And then there's Al-Shabaab. We have been at war, the infamous war in 2008 and 2011, and then still there are, as a peacekeeping mission, there are Ethiopian militaries in Somalia still. So Al-Shabaab is, against Ethiopia. They always send threats. So maybe that is something, the reason why it did not work for Ethiopia with regards to the Lamu port. Now we come, so I think it becomes, more preferable for Ethiopia than it's the Berbera port, which is in Somaliland. Now, the Berbera port, it economically and time-wise, it is really beneficial for Ethiopia. The strategic port it's a strategic port for Ethiopia, meaning this port of Berbera. Now, by signing this deal, it's ready to serve as Ethiopia's primary gateway for importing and exporting products to the rest of the world. It will become its commercial port. And then it provides also a quicker and more effective route for transporting Ethiopian commodities compared to the other ports that Ethiopia is using now, which is the port of Djibouti, which in turn, it reduces the time and also the money needed for shipping. As part of the continuous development of the Berbera corridor, Ethiopia is now working on expanding roads to Berbera port and the Ethiopian border, to expand the trade opportunities. Now, so as you see, this is now what happens. This is what it means. Now, the challenge and the opportunities around it, what it does for Ethiopia, it is, first of all, let's talk about the opportunities. Now, for Ethiopia, it's a commercial port to do import and export. Now, it also gives Ethiopia a naval base, meaning for Ethiopia, even if it's now a landlocked country, before Eritrea get its independence, it used to own the Asa port, and it has actually the Ethiopian shipping line. It's a government one. It still owns its ships. So whatever import and export happens, or the trading, even if we are renting a port, our ships are still working, and it has its shipping lines, and the naval base, the Navy is still also there. It trains and graduates trainees of people who become working as a Navy. So it will get not only commercial port, also a naval base, and also maybe but also a military base and maybe Air Force. Now, it will have the other thing is, the other benefit it will bring for Ethiopia is it will have international influence with other, superpower countries who have military base on the Red Sea. Now, this is a 50 years lease. So economically, geopolitically, and security-wise, you can imagine what Ethiopia will become, by having an access to the sea and having this port. So it's really, if you look at it from the Ethiopia point of view, it's a milestone for Ethiopia, okay, being a landlocked, and then now to have an access to the sea and to own a port, okay? So it's a milestone. Now, the opportunity, on the other hand, for Somaliland is it will bring financial, of course, the financial part of it. This commercial part, it's a wrong one, but financially it will benefit from Ethiopia, and it will get recognition. It's a self-declared state, as we said, from Somalia. Now, Ethiopia is expected to recognize Somaliland. That's number one. Secondly, from financially. Now, when the Prime Minister have been lobbying about this idea, he said that we are not saying that for free to get an access to the sea. He said he's ready, to exchange share of, for example, the most successful national projects like the Ethiopian Airlines, and then which is a very renowned, an international airline. It's that's one. And then the other thing is also, he was talking about from the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam, because the country Ethiopia plan to export power. Now I think also Ethiopian Telecom has come into the figure. So from which these national projects, national companies, Somaliland will get a share. It's not yet disclosed, but it definitely is that Somaliland will get a benefit, of course, a financial benefit from this. Now, the challenges, when we talk about the challenges, there are oppositions from, as Ethiopia is signing a memorandum of understanding with a state, a self-declared state that's not recognized yet by whether it's the members of the African Union or the United Nations, the countries, who are members to the United Nations. So it's expected that the opposition will be there. So now, opposition from the region, we have read already. Some countries have released their statements, also from the West, from the Western countries. And then from the historical enemies of Ethiopia. And then, maybe this is again my analysis, alienation by the Eastern African community. Maybe I'm thinking loud, but why I am saying is that Somalia recently has become the Eastern African community member. But I mean, Eastern African community members have, I think, it comprises most of the countries in the eastern part of the continent. Only Ethiopia and Eritrea are not part of it. Why? Do not ask me. I don't know why. That's really a puzzle for me. Maybe someday I'll come and analyze this for you. Now, let's talk, let me shed light who said what, okay? First of all, the first opposition comes from, as it is expected, from Somalia. So as you can see the headline here, Somalia rejects Ethiopia deal with breakaway Somaliland, meaning, this MOU signing. Now, why I say it's a self-contradicting opposition is that because, look, now, before I go there, now this is a Somalian guy who said on Twitter, Somalia reached out to Egypt and Qatar to galvanize Arab League support following Ethiopia's decision to illegally annex Somali territory on the Red Sea coast. Now, Somalia calls on the global community to exert pressure on Ethiopia to return to the confines of international laws. It's interesting, how these African countries, whenever there's something, jump and try, to pass the African Union, and then, try to complain to the Arab League and other to use the international community. I mean, Somaliland is not recognized by the African Union. It's not even, an advantage for Ethiopia if Somalia complains to the African Union. But as a Pan-Africanist, I am saying, please, whatever complaint there is, start with the African Union. Have respect to this organization. So I find it really interesting for Somalia, just to pass the African Union and go to the Arab League. And there is even IGAD also, which is part for the Eastern African community. Now, why I say it's a self-contradicting opposition, look, on 29 December, you can see Somalia itself is in talk formally with Somaliland. Now, they have signed some kind of agreement with Somalia and Somaliland. This was in Djibouti, which is achieved through Djibouti's president mediation or Djibouti's government mediation. So they have agreed not to provoke each other, not to come out and say anything that is against either of these countries. So even Somalia itself is in talk, although it does not recognize Somaliland as a state, but it is formally in talk with these countries. And in the beginning, I told you that there are a number of several countries who have diplomatic relationship with Somaliland, albeit they failed to recognize Somaliland. Now, another country, which is, the historical enemies of Ethiopia, that's Egypt. So Egypt was quick to come out and say Egypt stands firm with Somalia in face of against Ethiopia. Egypt is ongoing. Historically, it's an enemy country to Ethiopia. But I mean, historically also there's a great deal, the two people share a great deal of culture and other things in earlier times. But recently, with the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam building, Egypt have been rift with Ethiopia or against Ethiopia, so that does not really surprise. Now, but again, what is the self-contradicting it is because now Egypt is accusing Ethiopia that Ethiopia is signing a memorandum of understanding with Somaliland, which is not a recognized state, and this is against Somalia. But look at it. Look at Egypt itself. In 2020, it allegedly was about to have a military base in Somaliland. Ethiopia has made it clear it opposes that because there was really an ongoing tension between Egypt and Ethiopia. We're trying to reach an agreement on the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. So it was at that time Egypt approached Somaliland and to have a military base. Okay. Here again, we see some at that time also the Somaliland member of parliament, they opposed Egyptian proposal to set up a military base. So even Egypt itself have a diplomatic relationship and wanted to have allegedly to have a military base in Somaliland. Now it says, it turns around and, when it is Ethiopia who is signing the memorandum of understanding, it's accusing Ethiopia. Now, what did the government of Ethiopia say so far? It said the deal has infuriated the government in Mogadishu, which has vowed to defend its territory by any legal means. This is what, the Somali government said. And also Somalia actually recalled its ambassador within hours after that MOU was signed. Okay, now the Ethiopian government said no party or country will be affected by this MOU. There is no broken trust, nor is there any laws that have been transgressed. Okay, now it also says that even though Somaliland has not been fully recognized, it has nevertheless signed agreements with various countries, very true, with various countries, including for port development. And then again, quote opens, yet there has been no murmur or complaint when this materialized. It added, it's saying now when it is Ethiopia, the West is making noise. And even, from the international, the European Union has said this is essential for peace and stability of the Horn of African region, the EU said in a statement. Now, the European Union, by the way, it has a diplomatic relationship. Some of the European countries have diplomatic relationship with Somaliland. Now, let me just state some of the countries, okay? These are the countries where, Somaliland has representatives in these countries, okay? Ethiopia, Djibouti, United Arab Emirates, South Sudan, UK, Kenya, Norway, France, Egypt, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, Sweden, Taiwan, Italy, and USA. By the way, Taiwan is the only country who recognized Somaliland, okay, like officially. But who's Taiwan again with its ongoing thing with China, you might say that. Now, countries who have representatives in Somaliland is again Ethiopia, Turkey, Djibouti, Kenya, UK, Denmark, Taiwan, and United Arab Emirates. United Arab Emirates, I think, has a lot of share in of the port of Berbera in Somaliland. But again, the self-contradiction continues now. UK, this man is a member of parliament in the UK. He said, we should, meaning the British government, recognize Somaliland as a full member of the international community, and I hope as a member of the Commonwealth in due course. Just to give you a bit of a background, Somaliland has been all this is, the remnants of the remnants of colonialism. Now, there is a bigger Somalia. Now, the Somaliland used to be colonized by the British. Djibouti, which was also part of Somalia, was it used to be known as the French Somaliland, okay, and then part of it under Ethiopia, and then the bigger Somalia was colonized by Italy. Now, historically, Somalia has been, Somalia has been independent for 4 days from June, from June 26 up until July 1st in 1960, when the UK has gave it its independence. So it became for 4 days an independent state by itself as Somaliland. And then on July 1st in 1960, when the Greater Somalia has got its independence from Italy, then it united with the bigger Somalia and it becomes the Republic of Somalia up until again in 2018 in May, Somaliland became again, a self-declared state. So this is the history, okay, of Somaliland. Now, I think I covered so much of what I wanted to say. So let me just go ahead, and share. As I always do, I would like to share with you some questions before I leave. So, first of all, will Ethiopia face, do you think, alienation from the Eastern African community and the African Union by doing this? As the most, number two, as the most populous landlocked country, what would have been the other option for Ethiopia to acquire access to the sea? Okay. Will it, number three, please try to answer it without being biased. Number three, will Ethiopia lobby for Somaliland to be recognized by members of the African Union? What is the next for Horn of Africa geopolitics? So let us know in the comment section, what do you think of these questions? Please share your thought. That was it for me for today with regards to Ethiopia signing an MOU with Somaliland for sea access. And then, the self-contradicting opposition around it. I am here, to entertain all kinds of ideas. I am presenting you only as per my reading. I'm here also to learn from you. It's a Pan-African platform. So whatever promotes that Pan-Africanism, we will entertain it here. So thank you very much again for tuning in. Please share your thoughts below, and I will see you on the next one. But before I leave, please subscribe to the channel, smash that notification bell so you get notified whenever we are streaming or uploading a video. If you like what we bring you, here's the analysis, please give it thumbs up, and let's empower each other with information and knowledge. So please go ahead and share the video with others. And having said that, if you want to help us further, go to the description section or in the pinned comment, then you can donate to our PayPal account. That was it for me. Thank you again. And we have a plan also to bring various stakeholders and analysts from the region to discuss on this one. But please answer those questions. It's a bye-bye for me now. Ciao, ciao.